Hey friends, welcome to another edition of the Tennis and Bagels podcast. And lots of good things happened this week. Today's Sunday, February. What day is today? 19th. And we had a bunch of finals. And well, not just today, but yesterday we had the Doha final, which is by the way what we are actually starting on. But before, let's say hi to Vansh. How you doing, man?
Hey Andre, yeah, like you said, another really good week of tennis. Four pretty deserving winners from four different tournaments. Enjoyed catching quite a bit of them, and yeah, happy to start off with the action in Doha, which was yesterday for Iga, another win.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I forget. Like, I'm tired. I'm sorry. It's been a kind of a long week for me. But anyways, I did catch a lot of the matches. I didn't actually watch the final at Doha. I just kind of essentially saw a bunch of the actually Pegula matches, but I didn't get to watch much of Swiatek. And that wasn't actually
And
much to
I
watch
actually
because
don't blame you because her
yeah,
matches were so quick
yeah, exactly. I was about to say
that
I
you
barely had
blink and
any.
you miss it.
Yeah,
That's kind of been the theme for Iga in
yeah,
Doha because, I mean, she spent 2 hours and 59 minutes on court. Granted, okay, she had a bye in the quarterfinals, but I mean, to go through Danielle Collins 6-0, 6-1,
yeah,
Veronika Kudermetova, who's a player in like really good form, like who's been putting up some good wins like every single week. She's number 11 in the world.
yeah,
And then obviously you have Pegula, who Pegula and Iga met 4 times last year. In the final, Pegula herself had to save match points to get there, and that in and of itself was 69 minutes. So you add those all up, you have 2 hours 59 minutes for 6 sets of tennis, and you have a bagel in each of the three. And I don't know that Collins didn't play very well in the first match. Like that was more about Collins not being good
hmm,
than Iga being like super outstanding. I would say the first one, but the last two she really showed her
yeah,
class above the whole field.
yeah,
I feel like that was some seriously dominant stuff from her.
yeah,
Coming off the heels of losing in the fourth round of the Australian Open. And if you remember last year, this is where her win streak started with the 37 match wins in Doha. And actually, you can even trace it back to the final she won over Kontaveit last year. That was 6-2, 6-0. So
yeah,
4 matches in a row she's played in Doha, and they've all had a bagel set. And like they felt just as dominant as the scorelines.
yeah,
She's winning some of these matches just absolutely ruthless aggression. That serve that proved to be a very attackable in Australia in those conditions. You add wind to the equation. It was really, really windy in Doha, gusts of wind all over the place. Her supreme control on her ground strokes is what really stood out to me because obviously we know she has the top spin, but I feel like she has such a good idea about when to pull the trigger, when to go big on her forehand. She has such good, I think what helps her in the win, kind of like Rafael Nadal. I think she
yeah,
has such good footwork. So she's able to just like, she never looks out of position. Like even when she is, her shots have so much depth and margin that not only is she able to generate good racket head speed from like, not so great positions on the court, she's then so quick to get back to the center because she stays so low when she's
yeah,
moving. And like, I just think her and agility is so good. And then you add that with the fact that it's a slow to medium pace hard court. That's where I think she's almost done. That's where she really shows her class above the rest of the field because I thought Pegula actually played a decent first set. She broke Iga twice. She was up a break, or not up a break, but she got one of the breaks back, and then like broke back again. Like 2 of the games she won were breaks of serve,
hmm,
and Swiatek just blew her away. Like from 4-3, she wins the next 8 games in a row, and you're just like, Pegula I thought was a little bit like frustrated with the conditions and like the wind was kind of like bothering her. Obviously, we know she hits the ball pretty flat, but she's very consistent herself. She doesn't miss much.
yeah,
Um, but Ego was just next level. I thought in that
yeah.
second set there was no stopping her.
Yeah, I think it's what you do well in mentioning Nadal. Obviously, like the comparisons are endless. Well, I think it's very clear that Iga molded a lot of her game around like what Rafa Nadal has played. Like her forehand
Yeah,
is pretty similar in a lot of ways. But I think that's one of the things that may or may not have come like unintentionally to her as an advantage is that Nadal is one of the masters of playing in wind. And I
yeah,
guess like it probably carried over into Iga's game without maybe even she realizing it. But like it's the timing that you must have like in those windy conditions and the massive top spin that she can apply on her forehand. It just gives her a lot more margin to be playing in those conditions. I'm sure she doesn't enjoy it. I don't think any player really likes to play in wind because you really do have to be like a lot more careful, a lot more just have to pay a lot more attention, be a lot more focused, and is a lot easier to get frustrated. But the fact that she can dominate all the elements like that a lot more easily, like just show it. And I feel like one of the things that, as you said, like she didn't really have like the best of times back in Australia. She didn't get as far as she would have gotten, as people would have expected her to get to. Like a lot of people were saying that she was the favorite for the Australian Open. I was thinking that she might win it, although I did pick Sabalenka to win it, which was surprisingly good pick, honestly.
We both got that.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like it kind of, after you get back of a year like 2022 for Swiatek, like you come over like to 2023, not necessarily the best of showings in the first Grand Slam of the year. I guess like doubts, at least in my mind, started to creep in. Like, how is 2023 going to go for Swiatek? Is it going to be dominant? Maybe not as dominant. We cannot really expect 37 wins in a row. If she does that is absolutely monumental. But I don't think this is going to happen. I think she's going to win. She's going to lose rather a lot sooner. But I think this week kind of. It's her first week back, I think, in on tour since Australia as well. It really did show me that I think she does still like really believe and doesn't necessarily feel the pressure, or if she's feeling it, she's dealing it a lot better than like feeling the pressure as not only being the world number one, but coming off of the back of such an incredible year as 2022 was. So I think it's going to be business as usual for her this year, and if she loses, I think she's going to be able to deal with it like very well.
Yeah, and it has to be said that even though she didn't play her best in the Australian Open, like Rybakina played one of the best matches. Like you have to play tactically against her, which is really like just go after every single first serve that that is spun in, because obviously we know that's not like the strength of her game, right? Particularly on a fast court, and Rybakina was just able to do that like relentlessly throughout the whole match. And she's obviously such a massive server herself. She's a clean ball striker if you don't get it out of her strike zone. And she's able to just like, even in that match, even though Iga was not necessarily having her timing from the baseline, she was winning most of the rallies that went over 5 shots. It's just that Rybakina dominated the 0-4 shot category. Like way too much for Iga to really even like flip the script, even though she was 3-love up in the second set. And there were some chances maybe if she wins that second set. But I just think, and she was obviously feeling the pressure. Like she had just lost to Pegula at the United Cup. A lot of people were talking about her. And I think this time of the season, she just feels so comfortable. Like from Doha to the French Open, I feel like there's no one I can confidently say like who will be as more reliable. I don't, it's quite possible she doesn't win all these 6 titles again like she did last year. It's very, very, very hard to repeat something like that. But it's going to take a really, really supreme performance for someone to beat her, and she's just going to gain a lot of points. Like I think enough to stay number one is what I think. Like just, she might not win Indian Wells and Miami, but I think she'll win probably at least one of them. I think she'll probably still win the French if I were to predict right now, and probably another clay tournament as well. Like it's just the challenge for her is, I think, is always going to be Australia and Wimbledon, which she hasn't won yet. But I think, like it's a joke that she already has 12 titles and she's not even 22. Like she turns 22 in May.
Yeah,
she's already winning like these. She's winning a handful, and she's still the dominant number one.
Yeah,
like points. You look at the points difference; it's still so big.
Yeah, I have a strong feeling that she will defend Indian Wells. I think the conditions are good
I like that for her actually, because like we were just talking about the control and the wind, like that's going to be a factor at Indian Wells, and you add the height bounce, you add all the variables.
Yeah,
just think, and also because the attention I feel like will be on so many other players as well. Like maybe less so on the WTA, but like because it's a combined event.
Yeah,
and because you play every other day. We'll see how she handles that, because I remember last year, she kind of struggled in the first few rounds.
Yeah.
Like she had those tough matches against like Kerber, particularly Kerber. But like early on, she was losing the first sets, and then after that, she really picked it up from quarterfinals onwards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah, it will be
and
interesting to see.
yeah, and next up, and it's funny that you mentioned her age. Like she's 21, she turns 22 in the
Yeah.
31st of May.
Yeah, so still like 3 months away, like I think
Yeah,
during the French.
yeah.
Like
I'm
just
checking.
like
Yeah,
Nadal.
exactly. And the similarities are just too many. But it's like the one thing that I've been checking. Her next tournament is Dubai,
Yeah, she
and
will be the number one seed here, and it'll be fun to
yeah,
see Sabalenka back as well
yeah,
because we'll see how she handles being a Grand Slam champion now. And
exactly. That would be very interesting too. Yeah,
I personally, I would love to see a final between 1 and 2. I
I
think we're
think
starting to
yeah,
see a lot more like how like parity. We are still seeing like 10 players can win tournaments and stuff like that. But I think if you look at the lineup here in, for example, in Doha, like 7 of the top 8 seeds made the quarterfinals. That's pretty good reliability. Like
yeah,
because you had so many of the top players playing, and then you even had like Sakari and Pegula get to the
yeah,
semis.
yeah,
Sakari another semifinal defeat, but even though it was to Pegula this time, it was a three-setter. She had some really good wins to get there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
And Swiatek has a kind of a tricky round in her opener. She faces
oh
Leila
yeah,
Fernandez because she just
yeah,
won a match today, I believe.
yeah.
I still would say Swiatek will get the best of her, but like last time that they played each other was like in January last year. Um,
Mm. That
a
was
lot has
before the
happened
Australian
since
Open.
then. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was in Adelaide.
uh-huh.
I'm excited to see what happens, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely tricky.
yeah,
Don't
for
wanna,
sure.
yeah, but
Did
yeah,
did Leila have to qualify for this,
not
or
for this one
was
in
she given?
particular. Yeah,
Oh yeah, her ranking was high enough, right? So
yeah, it's just because the draw
she didn't
is
have to play
large. Yeah,
qualies because last
yeah,
week she was having to play Pliskova in the final round
that
again.
was nuts.
That's tough.
But the thing is, like, this draw is a lot larger. I think is a 64.
Yeah, yeah, that helps.
Yeah, so
Those
you
500s are
enter a
so
lot
tough to
more.
get into.
Yeah,
It helps that it's a 64 draw.
yeah,
I mean, like there's some loaded matches even then in the first round. Like you still have Andreescu and Rybakina, for example.
yeah. It's the first round. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I like also how like it'll finish on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
then you don't have like 4 or 5 finals on the same day at like the same time. So you
yeah,
can actually, I feel like the women get the spotlight properly on Saturday because I think next week there's only one 250 and there's Doha 1000. The 250 is in Mexico. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, and yeah, I guess like we'll have to wait and see. Like next week we'll be back about. Today we won't be going over the full draw of Dubai because like there's a few things that happened this week that we would want to get
yes.
over. Maybe we might do a final preview or something. I think that'll be fun. Especially if we get a Sabalenka Swiatek, that would definitely would love to do like
Yeah,
an
it would
extra
be fun to
episode
break
of this
down
one.
the results of that 1000, and then also like it'll be a week before Indian Wells.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're happy over to switch over to the men now.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally. We had a few big things happening this week. Like obviously world number 2 Alcaraz is finally back on tour. I think he didn't play a single event this year, has he?
No, it's been over three
Yeah.
months. The last time we saw him was pull out of the Paris Masters quarterfinal with an abdominal injury against Holger Rune. He had to retire in the second set tiebreak, I believe it was.
Mm.
And then he was out for the rest of the year. So it was a shame he didn't get to play the ATP finals, didn't get to play the Australian Open. We really missed him in Australia. That was, would have really added to the excitement, I think,
Yeah.
had he been there. And then I think he missed Australia, but not with the injury that happened in Paris. It was another injury that he suffered in practice.
Yeah.
And he had like a leg or hamstring injury. And so now it looks like he's recovered from that. I love his decision to come back and play on the South American clay.
Yeah.
Because imagine if he'd come back to Rotterdam, he would have had to play these top players, so quickly and not really, in conditions that he loves, like at this point in his career. So to come back in Rotterdam, to come back in Buenos Aires on the clay, and then I think he was able to experiment a little bit and work his way into the draw. Although I will say Laszlo Jera in the first round, I mean that's not easy. That guy has some pedigree on clay. He's won Rio before.
Mm.
He has some big wins on that surface. So that he was able to navigate that match. That was three setters. But what stood out to me is that all of what made Alcaraz great is all still there. Like
Yes.
that full package, that excitement that we love, that raw energy and that shot making and the speed.
Yeah.
I was keeping an eye out for his footwork and speed and to see like, if he's able to bounce back from, some ups and downs. And he was able to do that so nicely, because obviously I mentioned the 3-setter that he had in the first match. He was able to win against Laszlo Djere, but then he played Dusan Lajovic in the next round. That was 6-4, 6-2. And there was some really awesome drop shots and, speed related retrievals. I noticed on his serve, I was looking out for his serve, because I said the two things that Alcaraz probably I'll look out for this year is like how much bigger and more efficient does that first serve get? Because we know he has the speeds. Like he can hit 130, but is he going to improve the spot serving and the variation? And I think I noticed that he wasn't hitting as many kick serves this week. He was hitting more slice and flat serves. So that's, and that's interesting, because obviously on the clay, we know that kick serve, is really effective. He can get over players' shoulders, especially on the ad side. He can then dictate with a first ball forehand or backhand. But in this, he was hitting a lot more flat, a lot more kick. He was mixing it up, and he was still getting the high speeds. He hit like 137. He hit some 227 Ks. And yeah, he was getting some, even though he got broken and stuff. I like he was like experimenting. He was serving and volleying. He was like trying out different things. And I feel like he can do that in a field like this, even though like these are such good players. I feel like even when he gets broken, he can always counter his return. He can and break back. And yeah, just another electrifying week for Alcaraz. And I was a little bit. I thought the Norrie match would maybe go 3 sets. It would be tricky.
Yeah, it was tricky in the end.
It was tricky because he was up 6-3, 5-2.
Yeah,
and then I think he felt the nerves a little bit of like this was his first time closing out a title since the U.S. Open.
Yeah,
so he played kind of a nervy game to get broken, and then like you never want to allow Norrie back into a match, because he's really tough to beat, especially if you allow him another chance. And then Alcaraz was able to
close him out.
To close it out at 7-5. So.
Yeah, I thought it was a great decision as well that he chose to go to South America. Of course, like he has points to defend in Rio, so that's already good that he chose to go down and just play on clay.
It's pretty much the same field in Rio as it was in Buenos Aires.
Exactly.
So it's just 500 points, but essentially the same players. You have Musetti, Schwartzman, Norrie. It's all the same seeds.
And I think that's pretty good as well, because like I feel like the atmosphere was really good for Alcaraz as well. Like just playing like in a Spanish speaking country, a lot of fans around. Like he can zero pressure essentially. Yeah, it was so good.
Videos of people were literally lying on the floor to watch his practices outside of the.
I would have done that too.
It's like I don't blame them. Like this, you might not get that chance again. To go in because it's so packed, but. Yeah, you're so right about the reception. Like, because he speaks Spanish, he just feels like so comfortable in that environment. Yeah,
you could see in his reactions sometimes you're just like having so much fun to be back on court, and that was essentially like as you said, like the energy was back. I love that he played drop shots as well. Like I feel like it's almost like he never left. In a sense, like of course, like he might have been a little rusty here and there. Like I feel like the fact that he wasn't able to close the title right away, it was one of those, but like he wasn't necessarily mistiming his drop shots. He didn't really lose his touch. His accuracy on the forehand and the backhand were still pretty awesome. And the way that he came back to take the second set in the final and win against Norrie was pretty phenomenal, because you could see he was frustrated. And that, like, I remember like one of the things that he was saying like last year, like he's sort of like Dominic Thiem was, that when he's frustrated and when he's playing not as well, he starts just like whacking the ball and like wailing it like as hard as he can.
He's like Thiem in that sense. Like
exactly.
He starts going bigger when he gets tight.
Yeah.
You see some players, they get most players actually get passive and they start rolling balls in and maybe hoping for their opponent to miss. He's not
we're gonna talk about him like later on, but Fritz ended up doing that in the Delray Beach final today, I noticed. And and like back to Alcaraz, he just started like hitting big forehands, big backhands, big serves, and just kind of like pumping himself up, like just big vamos like on court. And you could see that and it was so quick though, like because it's so easy that for a player when they get frustrated, just kind of let this go for like way too long. For him, it took him like 2 games or something like that, like because it was pretty insane.
He shook that off pretty quickly, because that could have gotten complicated. If Norrie holds there.
Yeah,
they go to a tie break. I mean, I remember their matches like last year. They had some good battles. These two, Norrie actually beat him the last time they played in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 3-hour match, 3 sets. It was just before the U.S. Open in the quarterfinals of Cincinnati. But they played in Indian Wells. They played in Madrid. they played in the first round of the U.S. Open actually back in 21. And so they played each other like 5 times now, and their matches have been good. Like it's a good contrast, I think.
Yeah.
For Carlos to really test himself. So now he plays Buenos Aires, and then he plays Acapulco the week after that. So it'd be interesting to see, like, if he can keep this going in Rio. I think he's still the favorite to defend his title there.
Yeah.
Because essentially it's the same field, and I don't really see like who would really stop him.
Yeah.
Unless, maybe if fatigue comes into play, or
yeah.
You never know. He can always throw in a poor set or two here and there, but
yeah, I do hope that like he's not, because like he's just coming back from an injury break and whatnot. But I hope that his body can take like too many tournaments in succession, especially like he ends up winning, I guess, Rio. I'm not entirely sure. Like, do you think he would play Acapulco? Do you think he drops out of one of those tournaments to try to like rest a bit? Do you think he's just young enough that his body just recovered?
Yeah, he might. Like honestly, he could go either way. It depends on how Rio goes. Like he can always like just do that last minute. I remember last year he won those epic matches in Madrid against Nadal, Djokovic, Zverev, and then after that we all thought he was going to Rome. He was in the draw, and then he just decided to play it safe, pulled out.
Yeah,
and he was dealing with a niggle or two, and I think he wouldn't want to mess with that because he has so many points to defend in New Wells, Miami.
Yeah.
And that extra week could actually help, because if you notice this week, like there's not much time between Dubai, Acapulco, and Indian Wells.
No,
it's just literally the week after. Whereas I remember last year they had like that week was Davis Cup week, like in the middle, but this year like the Davis Cup week was like the week after, so everything's like a week later.
Yeah.
But I think, like honestly, hopefully they've usually been making the right decision so far scheduling wise. Like last year he didn't play any turn-ups before the Australian Open. He didn't play Rome before the French. And he came back on the clay, and I remember everyone, we started to worry a little bit when he lost those 2 finals to Sinner and Musetti.
Yeah.
On the clay, and then he didn't like perform as well as we would have wanted in the hardcourt Masters. But then he won the U.S. Open, and then it's like, okay, yeah, that's what matters. And he won that, and then so no, he's a great asset to this game. Honestly, he is so exciting and brings a lot of casual fans, and like I think the ratings and everything, like the next 10 years as far as like the sport is concerned, and like just how marketable he is, and just like I like that he's cocky in a good way. Like it doesn't come across as arrogant at all. Like
no, yeah.
Like he knows how good he is, and he is at the same time respectful of all his peers.
Yeah. So it's just like the vibe that he gives is that he's enjoying a lot playing tennis.
Yeah, like you can see him just smiling at his team and just like his box. I noticed Juan Carlos Ferrer was not in the box this whole week, but yeah, like he still had his agent there. He still has a pretty big team, his physio and everyone there. So it's all good vibes for the Carlitos. Oh gosh, so good. That's what tennis needs. Yeah. Breakpoint
season 2, please bring in Alcaraz.
Yeah, I think he should be on there. If they're doing it, like because Iga and him won the U.S. Open, I think they'll do some filming, and hopefully, because you want to bring casuals into the game. Yeah, these are the guys. Yeah, this is the guy. Like I remember during the U.S. Open, I had friends who didn't even watch tennis. They saw Instagram posts and they followed the U.S. Open page, and they were just sending me highlight videos of Alcaraz hot shots. I was like, yo, they were like, yo, who is this guy? Like, how is he hitting these, like the behind the back shot against Sinner?
Oh yeah.
Like, the shots like that, like those.
And you reply to those friends like, he's the future of tennis.
Yeah, like, and then now they know like he's the number one, or he was the number one.
Yeah.
And it's just like I just want to see him and Djokovic. That's what I want to see, a matchup between them two. Yeah. Hopefully more than once, because I think that's the rivalry that's going to be the most exciting out of all of them. Djokovic, Alcaraz, like the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be.
Yeah. Hopefully Djokovic doesn't have like a super quick decline due to age. I don't see that happening. Like I don't feel like he gives vibes that this is happening to him, but you never really know. The guy's 36 years old now, so we'll see. I do
forget that, like, because a lot can change in like a year.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's easy to just sit here and be like, oh yeah, he's going to win 25 plus.
Yeah.
You just never know, because I remember even when Federer won 2018 Australian Open, it looked like, he was going to win more, or at least 1 or 2 more, and maybe even Wimbledon. But then like after the Wimbledon final in 2019, it just, his knee just stopped cooperating, and it was it was over pretty fast. So you
Yeah,
just never know.
exactly. Yeah.
So
So
we should
yeah,
just appreciate everything
yeah,
while it's there.
and I'm hoping that this year we can get like a few good like Alcaraz Djokovic matches. Do you think he plays? Because I think Djokovic is struggling to get in the US still.
Yeah,
So
I highly doubt he's going to be able to
yeah,
get into the Indian Wells in Miami. I thought he was looking for an exemption,
yeah,
and there's like some announcement on Twitter from an unofficial source hasn't been confirmed that he's scheduled to hold a press conference. So we'll see what that's about. I don't really know.
yeah,
We'll see. But as it stands, yeah, he can't get into the country Indian Wells in Miami, so he'll probably play Monte Carlo,
yeah,
and we'll see him on the clay. And it looks like Nadal's probably not going to play the Sunshine Swing
yeah,
either.
exactly as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully Nadal plays Monte Carlo. He's fit enough to get there, and who knows? Maybe he can get like another solid like semi-final final lineup if like all of three of them get to that stage. If Alcaraz decides to play Monte Carlo, of course.
Yes.
But yeah,
We'll see. I mean, Nadal hasn't dropped out of the top 10 since April of 2005, and I think that's in danger of now being that streak is in danger of being broken if he doesn't play Indian Wells Miami.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hope like he just gets back to form and he's healthy, so we can see like them all play together, and then have a good play season. Then maybe we'll see another Djokovic Nadal at the French or somewhere, and hopefully it's not in the fourth round or something, because you hope it's like semifinal final and not
Yeah. Although by the looks of it, it's kind of looking like a round 4. But actually, it would be more of it'll be around that.
But we'll see, because I there's a lot of retirement rumors and stuff swirling around Nadal. But for me, I have to wait and see him back on the clay, because even last year he didn't have any match prep leading into the French Open, and look what happened.
Yeah, and honestly, I will only believe Nadal is retiring when he holds a press conference and says, "I'm retiring for good this time." Yeah. So all this time has been saying like maybe, but like
honestly, I think in press conferences they should just stop asking these questions about retirement.
Yeah, like
ever been like, oh yeah, actually now that you think about it, I'm gonna retire. Now that you mention it, it's like they never do. Like they always just dodge the question. They'll say the same thing. Like I don't know. I don't know when. Like my body will stop. As long as I have the passion, I'll keep playing it.
Yeah.
It's always the same thing.
Especially like when it's like a Rafa Nadal like caliber player. Like you're not just gonna get him like to kind of like blow the secret out and just like in a press conference and then like a fourth round loss. Like he's not gonna sit up in there and just be like, yeah, actually I was planning on a press conference to announce that he's not gonna say that. It's gonna be a grand thing. He's gonna announce things. There's gonna be plenty of like journalists. Gonna be, like
some kind of a tour, or maybe just like he'll like it's these players are so methodical about it's gonna be interesting to see like how they decide to retire and whatnot, because like even like Roger, he was asked questions about it since 2007, like because back then it was like considered abnormal to play past 30.
Yeah, exactly.
And now that's been the big three are totally like
and that was mostly because of like players like Pete Sampras, who was he retired at 31, and other players before then
mostly were like the two big champions that I can think of in the 90s.
And then we had like Agassi like at 35, like playing good tennis, but he's like nowhere near. And people are just praising Agassi for playing that well at 35. Well, like you got Federer, Nadal, Djokovic at 37.
Nowadays you have people peaking at 28, 29. So
which is speaking of the next final that we were going to talk about before, you just went on a tangent just out of the blue. It was Medvedev Sinner, pretty good final. Medvedev had a really, really good tournament in my opinion.
Solid week.
Yeah, I was very scared that he was just gonna bow out in like round 1 to Davidovich Fokina, because his game was not clicking. Like he just, like it can happen to a defensive player and a counter puncher when, they're just not moving as well. The shots are just not as penetrating. They cannot get as deep. And Davidovich Fokina just was happy enough to just rip through his forehand and just like go for winners. But then I feel like when Medvedev really started clicking on his serve and on his defense, especially really on both wings, really, I think that's when the match turned around. And I think that's when the week entirely turned around for Medvedev, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. Like he started out kind of slow against Davidovich Fokina, and then he wins the next two sets, like, pretty comfortably after like struggling to find his timing. But I just think like indoor conditions, these slow like indoor hard courts, they're the best for Daniil, because he can just be the defensive wall that he likes to be from the back of the court, and then And then like when the opponent is least expecting it, he can be on that baseline and just inject pace in his forehands.
Yeah.
And then or just because like on a faster court, you can kind of rush that wing, and if you have like a decent amount of variety, or you use the the serve out wide on the deuce, and like there's all those things that players have been doing to him the past 1 year. They're just not able to do that with the same reliability and consistency on these slow indoor hard court conditions where like Medvedev, it's low bouncing too. Like it's the perfect ideal conditions. I feel like for Medvedev, if you remember last October, he also won Vienna, and he kind of beat, like he looked really good there too. Like he beat Dimitrov there. He beat Sinner. He beat Shapovalov in the final from a set down. So this week, it kind of reminded me of that. He looked better, like more in his element, I feel like.
Yeah.
And also he just frustrates his opponents because he gets them into these long baseline exchanges.
Yeah.
Where like you have to be so precise to get the ball by him, and just hitting it hard and hitting with brute force and being strong off of both wings is going to give you progress, but it's not going to win you points.
Yeah.
Because it'll just extend the rallies. And like even the match against Dimitrov, like most of the rallies were 7-8 shots. The match that Medvedev ended up winning 6-1, 6-2, but you just like unless you like you're just completely mixing it up, like you're serving and volleying, or you're just like you're having an out of mind day on your forehand or stuff like that. It takes like kind of some redlining tennis, I feel like, in these conditions, because like Medvedev is just so comfortable. I think it was an important week for him though, because he beat Felix, a top 10 player, like for the first time in over a year. His last top 10 win was against Tsitsipas, the Australian Open last year.
Yeah.
And now he's back in the top 8. I feel like that's where he belongs. He was number 11 coming into this week. And then, like a nice win over Sinner, who also had a really good week. Sinner won last week in Montpellier. Yeah. And so this was his 8th match in 9 days, I guess, because he played 3 matches there, and then like this was his 5th match here. But I feel like because I actually thought Sinner did really well in the first set when he won, because he was staying super patient in these rallies and not just pulling for the trigger early and making mistakes. Like he was very smart about how he played tactically, and he was like really hanging with Medvedev, kind of beating him at his own game, like in those long baseline rallies.
Yeah, he was
like over 9. They had rallies over 9 shots, and they had 32 rallies over 9 shots, and Sinner won 18 of those. So that's an important stat. But I think what that ended up doing is it took so much out of him physically.
That's true. Yeah.
The next 2 sets, he was just like you saw him a little bit like sort of hunched over after some points. Like he was just breathing heavily, like gasping for air. That's what I feel like Medvedev, he can do that. He can take your lungs away sometimes.
It really reminded me of when Medvedev played Rublev last year, the Australian Open, how they played like this 40-shot long rally that Rublev ended up winning. But then at the end of it was like nothing happened for Medvedev, and then Rublev was absolutely done. And it's one of the things that
I felt like Sinner did do some good things, like in terms of mixing it up in the first set. He was 10 for 15 at the net. He hit some good drop shots. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But he gave Medvedev kind of different looks. And I think, but that's not his natural game. I think that's the point, is like his natural game is still hit really big and clean off of both wings, and like just a barrage of offense. But against Medvedev, you kind of have to you can't just hit through him. You have to hit around him in a sense, and you have to be fresh enough physically to do that, because otherwise you're pulling the trigger on it's a mental challenge.
Yeah, you kind of have to outfox Medvedev in a way.
Yeah,
because
because you're not going to outgrind him from the baseline.
That's not going to happen
unless you're Djokovic, and even Djokovic in his later years, he doesn't do that. Like he'll serve and volley.
And one of the things that I thought was cool about Medvedev was that I've sort of noticing that like he's a lot more confident in his own game. Like the way that he celebrated the title was pretty Medvedev like this weird celebration that doesn't really mean anything, but
just kind of like a shake with the arms, right?
Exactly.
Like a shrug. It's just like, I think he made that his thing like after 2019. It's like, I'm not going to celebrate any of my titles.
Yeah,
because like that'll be my trait. Like,
which is awesome. It's definitely a trademark of him for sure. And I feel like his mental game is a lot better as well. Like his problem solving is a lot better nowadays.
I have to give him credit for his problem solving in this match, because I think last year he wasn't doing a great job of that. Like
exactly same.
Like when he lost the first set, he was not good. Like last year he was 4 for 11 in deciding set matches, and the year before that in 2021 he was 14-5. So that's a big gap. And then now he's won 2 this week from a set down. and I thought his tactics were pretty good. Essentially, he didn't. What I liked also is that in the beginning of the first set, he started playing more aggressive. If you notice, like the first game of the second set, he actually hit some big forehands, some like good angles, like got Sinner off the court, and he immediately got the break. And I think that just set the tone for the rest of the set because now he's front running. He has a big serve.
Exactly.
And once he has the break, because he didn't have leads in the first set. Like he was finding it coming back, and Sinner was 4-1 up, and
I was actually really surprised. Like he was like running around his backhand to hit like a pretty big forehand. I had to look twice to see if it wasn't Sinner hitting that chop. Like it was actually Medvedev letting that out, and I was surprised that like he didn't really do that at all in the first set, and then he starts doing that. He did a couple like runs towards the net as well. He started like moving around Sinner with his backhand a lot more as well, using that like famous like inside out backhand that he has sometimes.
Yeah.
I definitely think that he kind of decided to make a change in his game, and it worked pretty well. Aside even from the fact that he could still outgrind Sinner from the baseline, but he definitely gave Sinner a lot more to think about when he started doing like those tactical changes in his game.
Yeah, and so some of that mojo is back. It's almost like he lost that first set. It kind of freed him up a little bit because he's like, yeah, I could have lost that 6-2 or 6-3, but it was 7-5 and didn't really panic. And it's just it'll be interesting to see what he does because as we know, this next part of the season, like up until August, it's like like as many points as he can gain is like the better for him because like let's be honest, Indian Wells, like I don't think those conditions suit him at all. Just like high bouncing, very slow, like ball goes fast through the air, but like he hits flat shots, and those are he's not going to get the same kind of penetration he would on a low bouncing slow like indoor hard court or any kind of other hard court besides Indian Wells. I actually think Miami might be a little better for him from a game style point of view. Like it's more close to a normal speed hard court.
What was his result last year in Indian Wells? Quarterfinal.
In a quarterfinal in Miami, Indian Wells he lost early. He lost to Monfils. It was like the second round, second match. So he's not been past the fourth round of Indian Wells, and he's made quarterfinals the last 2 years in Miami. And this was the time. Like last year, he was number one, and then he had the hernia operation after Miami. And then like he didn't play anything until the French or Geneva, and then the French on the clay. But next week he's playing Doha and then Dubai, so it'll be interesting to see. Like he plays 3 weeks in a row, and this might be good for him because now he's trying to get his ranking back up. And
kind of needs to before the clay season for sure. I do think that he might, because he reached the quarterfinals 2 years ago at the French. I do think that he might find a little bit more joy in clay in the next few, especially because he has a lot less pressure on his shoulders. He's just trying to get back up. So I think he might be able to play better or not. I don't know. We'll see.
I think so. I like it when he's the underdog for him. Like, when he was number one and he just lost that fight, it just didn't really like feel right. He was number one, but he didn't really he wasn't playing like it. Like he had the hernia thing. Like then he wasn't able to play Wimbledon. And then, he still had that lingering defeat to Nadal, which like he never got through. But now I think the fact that Australia is done, like now that he's like the full 1 year cycle has been complete and he got that out of the way. Like now, like people aren't really talking about him as a contender. Even like this week, I feel like even me, like I'm being really cautious in terms of like it was one really good week, but I still want to see him do this in a Masters 1000 and in a major, particularly the ones where he's normally won. And then I can be like, okay, Medvedev is like he's back to 2021 level.
Yeah, we'll see by the time that he gets like maybe top 3 or 5 if he can get there. So we'll see if he can pull that off. And I think Sinner. I'm still sort of. How do you feel about Sinner? Do you think he's gonna be back into the top 10 this year? I think he's gonna be able to make it to Turin.
Yeah, I feel like he'll be in the top 10 this year. I think he's improving, even though the ranking, like he was at 17 at one point. Now I think he's 12, but also more than just the ranking. I think he's like he got his first top 5 win in a long time over Tsitsipas. That was a big win for him to shake off the Australian Open match 5-set loss, and also the way he did it. It was very confident, imposing. He like dominated Tsitsipas mostly in that match. And then now he does well indoor hardcourt. He won the title last week, made the final this week. He's probably a favorite to win the title next week as well if he's physically. I worried about him a little bit physically, and I think he's missing like physically, like, can his fitness hold up? Because we've seen him get a little bit of niggles and injuries that like these are kind of like minor injuries, but then they cost him like for the match or like for like 2 or 3 weeks after that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he can keep that up, like just get a little stronger in the legs, like keep working on the variety, because I feel like actually, like if I compare him to Rublev, I think he's more comfortable at the net than Rublev is. Like,
yeah,
he's like he just doesn't trust himself to do it enough in big moments yet. But I feel like when he's up there, like he feels comfortable up there. Like he has options in his game. It's just now like mixing them up against top 5 level opposition in the big moments and doing it consistently without having a physical dip. I feel like that's the next step, is like no more physical dips.
Yeah.
And like let's close out some of these wins.
Yeah.
Because like, obviously we know last year the last 3 majors, like 6-3 in the 5th against Alcaraz, Tsitsipas, and Djokovic. So that shows that he's on the corner of flipping some of these head to heads.
Yeah.
I think that last win was big.
Yeah, I do feel like there's like he's getting really close, and that's like when it starts to get like sort of like how Felix got super close 8 times to finals and never really could close it up. You start thinking about this scar tissue and like how is it going to overcome those mentally. I just feel like in a way, like Felix, he sort of needs a big breakthrough win in a way that he sort of like you're saying, like just flipping up like one of those like big matches that he can win in a big tournament as well.
Actually, for Felix, like against the Medvedev matchup, because he also had a match point against him last year.
Yeah, and
he's played him tight a couple of other times, but this one, like, it was just perfect conditions for Daniil in the quarterfinals. And I saw Felix trying to serve and volley a lot, like just to overcompensate for the lack of baseline rallies. He's inevitably going to win the long ones against Medvedev, especially.
But Felix didn't play his best though. Like there was a little set for him.
It was not a great performance. Made a lot more unforced errors. Like just wasn't patient enough.
Yeah, and his first serve was really low in terms of percentage.
The first serve percentage was 49% for the whole match. So that's definitely not going to cut it. And he was defending his title, so that's always.
It might have gotten to him a bit. Yeah.
But because last year he also made the Marseille final, but now he's playing in Doha this week.
Yeah, I think my guess is that he wants to maybe, I don't know if he's playing Dubai, but like he might be looking for, and I might be saying like just garbage right now, but like, I don't know if he's looking for something that's more similar to Indian Wells so that he can finally do well in there, because it's like, I feel like Marseille doesn't necessarily make much of a difference, and maybe just trying to find like, well, I guess Marseille's competition is pretty high as well, but like I don't know, like maybe Doha just pays more money, which is also a possibility. So.
You never know. Like sometimes it's appearance fees. It's like you agree like early on to play these events, like once like you get a contract or something, or
plus it's also 250, so he would if he makes the final, he'll be defending the same point. So
maybe I mean but any other takeaways from Rotterdam? I thought Talon Griekspoor, he's had a good start to the year.
Yeah.
I remember we were talking about him in this podcast in 2021 at the end of the year with Damien.
Yeah.
Because he had won like 6 challenger titles. And he's had a good start to the year. He won a 250 in Pune in India, and then I think he made the 3rd round of the Australian Open, lost to Tsitsipas. And then he's now made the semis here, and he beat Zverev along the way, which is a good win.
Yeah.
And then he played a tight match against Sinner in the semis, like a respectable 7-5, 7-6.
Yeah, it's true.
And he was 95 before Pune. Now he's 40. So I think he's like number 9 or 10 in the race too.
Yeah, that bodes pretty well for him, because he probably wants to push his ranking to be seeded at the French Open.
If he gets seeded,
so
something, because we're seeing more guys kind of break through at his age, winning like from the Challenger Tour, but like transferring it onto the main tour and being in the top 50.
How old is he now?
Like 26.
Okay, So like I saw him playing once in a Davis Cup tie, and he's one of those guys that just hits pretty big. So you can never really go that wrong with that. Like it's normally going to win you a lot of matches at the like 250s and even like 500s like he did. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see. Like it'll be one of those opponents that you don't really want to draw, like if you're starting slow. So or if you're like a first round.
Worried about a little bit concerned about Runa.
Yeah, that's mostly physically, isn't it?
Because physically, yeah, and because he was slated to play so many tournaments in a row. Like after Davis Cup, then he was playing Montpellier, Ronan. He was going to play every week until Indian Wells. But then I saw like he just didn't look quite right, and then he had a wrist injury, and then he had to retire.
Yeah,
middle of his match. And actually, I think the wrist injury is like when he hurt it at the Australian Open when he fell against Hugo Humbert, like he hurt his ankle and then he fell on his wrist.
Oh,
but it was still like good enough to like play and like recover. Like he still played in a 5-setter with Rublev, and then he played like last week, got to the semis and lost to Cressy, and then this week. But now he's pulled out of Montpellier, so we'll see. I hope he's not like just rushing into things and just like we still have to see with him like do it into the outdoors. It's like the recency bias thing because he won Paris and he got to the finals of Basel and like had a good run at the end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we sort of like the February and October months are kind of interesting because it's like data gathering, and it's also like is it foreshadowing another big run for some of these players, in the slams or in the big events, or is it just more like this is where they do really well, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. I think wrist injuries are just really terrible. Like you can see, like in Del Potro,
you don't want to mess up with the wrist. Like if it's hurting one bit, I feel like maybe that's why I was more concerned. Actually, it was the wrist because we've seen what happened with Team and Del Potro and
those are terrible. So yeah, and then just moving on,
Team is playing again this week. Actually,
he did. So, Wait, but he also played this weekend. Where did he play? Was it Rotterdam that he was playing at?
No, he played this week in Buenos Aires.
Oh yeah, it's true.
He beat Alex Molchan in the first round, which I thought was a good win, and then he lost to Juan Pablo Varillas.
Who actually reached the semifinals, isn't it?
Yeah, he had a very good week because he beat Musetti, which I didn't expect, and then he like pushed Norrie decently tight for 2 sets. Yeah.
So it was all in all, it was in hindsight not a bad loss, especially for.
But now I think he's playing Montero in the first round of Rio, and then if he wins that, then he plays Norrie. So,
well, we'll see what happens. Like two lefties in a row, I guess would be kind of a good training.
We'll see because Team I was so much positive about him at the end of last year when he like lost to Korda in Antwerp and he beat Hurkacz. Had some good wins like from post Wimbledon clay till Vienna, and then he shut it down for the year after Vienna. I thought, okay, good, he'll have a 2-3 month off season, and he can work his way back. In the rankings, but this year hasn't got any wins apart from the first round and against Molchan. He hasn't been able to win sets and the Australian Open. I feel like that was the worst opponent he could have got, Rublev in the first round. That's because it's already a kind of a tough matchup for him, and he's still trying to work his way back in the first round. And then he lost both his matches at the Davis Cup in Croatia at the tie there, and then the loss on the clay these last couple of weeks. But we'll see. Hopefully he can get to at least a good level that he's winning some matches. I think in a way, even Murray is right now, sort of is able to make some deep runs, and sometimes you can still expect good matches out of him. But the way that he is right now, it's I don't know. It's almost thinking, shouldn't you be playing a couple more challengers here and there just to try it out? But I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I feel like it'll be kind of the same. The South American challengers and the 250 challengers are not that much difference. I feel like now.
Yeah.
In terms of the caliber of players that he's going to face, just has to back up the wins, and there's no really substitute. I feel at this point, a little bit like Stan, but Stan is just a lot older and is kind of one big last push, because he also made the quarterfinals in Rotterdam, and he's kind of in a similar ranking, around 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
But oh yeah, you mentioned Murray. He's playing this week as well in Doha. I think he's playing Sonego in the first round. If he wins that, then
Yeah.
he'll play Zverev. I think that's what I saw in the draw. So
That's a pretty bad draw.
yeah, but it's winnable. I think if he
Yeah.
like yeah, if he continues the form that he had in Australia and doesn't spend too much energy in his first round. That's what I
Yeah.
always we always kind of go back to that with Andy. It's like
Can you not play an
back-to-back
epic
games.
match in the first
Yeah,
round?
like, can you not go 3.5 hours, please?
Yeah.
So you have enough left in the tank.
Which, by the way, is more than capable of going 3.5 hours in 3 sets. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, we should talk. The last thing we should talk about was Delray Beach. Fritz winning another title. This is his fifth title now. And he beat Mackenzie McDonald in the semis, and he beat Miomir Kecmanovic in the final today.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually watched Kecmanovic and Fritz last year live with my dad at Indian Wells. That was the quarterfinal match, and then they played again the following week, and Kecmanovic beat him. And then Kecmanovic played this epic with Alcaraz, and this is kind of when Kecmanovic was like peaking last year.
Yeah.
Like from Australian Open to Indian Wells in Miami. But Fritz, I thought, was the favorite and was likely going to win this title. He had some blips and he didn't like always play his best. Like you probably watched the match against Manarino a little bit.
Yeah.
And that was a bit tricky, but he comes through in these tie breaks. I think that's a big takeaway this year. He's 11-1 in tie breaks this year. And just the one loss that he had was to Popyrin in the second set after winning the first set in tie break. That was the only tie break that he lost, and ended up like kind of costing him the match against Alexei Popyrin, because I kind of think if he beats Popyrin in that Australian Open, with the way that draw was, like, I thought he was going to make the semifinals, honestly, there. So
yeah,
probably the next step for Fritz is start doing better in these majors and avoid these losses like to Brandon Holt in the first round of the US Open and then second round of Australian Open, Alexei Popyrin. Like on paper, these aren't good losses. Like they might have been playing really well and peaking that day, and like Popyrin is one of those players, and he played out of his mind, to be fair, but Fritz, the kind of caliber of a player he is now, like he should now. I think people expect him like to go deep and win these type of matches.
Yeah,
but this is good. Like he's won his fifth title here, and he's still doing decent aside from that loss. But yeah, and then I think the other takeaway is like he's number 5 in the world, starting February 27th. So that's mostly because like what I was saying earlier, like the Acapulco points for Nadal are coming off, and Rublev won Dubai last year, so those two are coming off a week earlier. So like it's not a guarantee that he'll be number 5 going into Indian Wells, because he still has to perform in Acapulco and in that February 27th week, and it kind of depends on how Rublev does in Dubai as well. But if he's seeded 5th and Djokovic is not allowed to play the Indian Wells in Miami, then that means he'll be seeded 4th. So that 4th seeding is always a big thing when you're trying to like just for the seedings, because we know how that works.
Yeah,
but
it'd be good for him to defend his title as well.
Oh yeah, and he really likes, and he's not like like a proven defender of titles or anything like that. It wouldn't shock anyone if he didn't defend it or he lost early with like an Indian Wells. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he gives up a decent showing and he makes the quarters, semis, or something like that, because the last 2 editions, like all of his biggest wins have come at Indian Wells. Like the last 2 editions, he's beaten Nadal, Rublev, Sinner, Berrettini, Zverev. Some really good wins, and and obviously he won the whole thing last year.
Yeah, I was really well. I thought he had a really good showing there at Beach. He was definitely the favorite to win it all.
Because last week he was also the favorite, but then we had the nice Wu Yibing story, and
oh yeah, that was way out of the ordinary. Like that was nothing that you cannot predict. But yeah, not that you essentially should be able. Well, you can't really predict anything, but I guess like 99% of it.
Mike Cation, by the way, because Mike Cation like predicted it before the tournament even started.
Wow.
Which
like he was going to win?
That he was going to win Delray Beach. Like when the draw came out, he saw the draw and he saw okay, Chapo is there. Like he likes that matchup against Chapo, and then he was like, okay, Wu Yibing is winning this whole thing, and he actually got it right. So
wow, props to him. Like probably the only person who predicted it, and that was probably with confidence.
He said it on air too, which is like even bigger because he was calling one of the challenger matches. He said on air, like Wu Yibing, I think he's going to win the title that week, and he's like, it actually happened. So
wow, that's nuts. Yeah, especially with Fritz in it. Like Fritz is an experienced player who's won a Masters 1000. So yeah, I think that one of the things that was surprising about Fritz is how how he shows himself in the court. Like it was very mature. Like he was very aware of like that the fact that he was the favorite and he was playing like the favorite for the title. Like the way that he played against Manarino, he was defending really well. He took his chances. Like he didn't miss his opportunities. I think he got broken towards the end of the second set. He dropped one of his breaks, but he had like a double break, so he ended up like closing out the match, I believe 6-4 or something like that. But
which match was this? Was this the
Manarino one? Yeah.
So okay,
yeah. So he was playing really well, but like I only could catch the highlights on Tennis TV about on Taylor Fritz and Kecmanovic. And I think that match was entirely on Fritz's racket, to be fair, because the forehand was definitely the biggest shot on court. His serve was a lot better. His return was really good. His backhand was able to keep up with Kecmanovic. Kecmanovic is still a little bit better, especially when he goes to like that down the line shot. But I don't think I think the only reason that he lost the second set, well, Kecmanovic did play really well, but I think Fritz kind of slowed down a bit. So like he was too happy to just trade and not really take take control of the rallies.
He probably got a little bit passive as he was closing out the title. Maybe felt the pressure a little bit.
Yeah, probably. So like I feel like that kind of really opened up the door for Kecmanovic to play his best tennis, just start like dictating in the rallies. And that's when it slipped up like for the second set, but then he got control of it like right away. And I think that's really props to Fritz because well, Kecmanovic is a good player and it's problem solving, right? You kind of have to get back and just restart.
Yeah, but I really like the self-belief that Fritz has. So I feel like he goes on the court against any player ranked 1 to 100 and he thinks he can win. Yeah. Like that's the impression that I get. Like he walks on that court against Nadal, Djokovic, and he won. He's like, I can win this match. And he plays, he backs himself and he he's not surprised by any of these results. Like to win these titles that like now he's been in 10 finals. He's won 5 of them. Like he's been around for quite some time. He's 25. And I feel like this is his prime. So now the question is like like can he put together a really deep run in a major? And can he like be one of those Americans that like gets into major finals? Because now Tiafoe's done it, Paul has done it, and the most consistent one hasn't. Because his best result is a quarterfinal at Wimbledon. So we'll see. I feel like Wimbledon and the U.S. Open are good opportunities for him to prove himself. Yeah, like on the biggest stage. Because I mean, it's no secret he's never going to be the best mover. Like you look at the top 10. He's not like defensively. He's improved in that department, and his ball striking is so good that when he's on the front foot, he's excellent. But when he's pushed into corners and he's having to defend, change directions, those great things that like for example Medvedev, Djokovic, like Alcaraz, like what they're also good at. Yeah, those things don't come as naturally to him. Like he's not the best athlete, but he's one of the best ball strikers, forehand, backhand, and serve. And his coordination is so good.
I feel like he's an improved version of John Isner in a way.
Oh yeah, much so, because his game is much more complete and he really hugs the baseline and he's competent on both wings. His backhand is like elite, like one of the best in the world. And he can change directions on it. And obviously the forehand is like even bigger of a weapon than it used to be. His backhand, I always thought the ball striking was always really good.
Yeah, I think the forehand, one of the greatest things about it is obviously he can put it anywhere. And he can disguise, he can disguise a shot so well. Like he can throw in a drop shot. That was one of the shots in the highlights that they put in up that he made an approach running around his backhand, and I was convinced he was gonna hit it. Yeah, and I was convinced he was gonna hit it inside out, and he hit it inside in, and I was just impressed because like that's a good skill to have, like to disguise your shot. Like you don't really want to be calling like the direction you're gonna go to with your body, and some players are good at detecting those things, right? So
it's a good idea to do it, especially when you have your opponent like push behind the baseline, because
Yeah.
like they're expecting to like defend and get back to the middle and like cover the cross court or the down the line. But if you throw in the drop shot, that just gives them like another thing to worry about.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, drop shots are, and he's got good feel as well. It's pretty complete, as you said. Like I feel like if he can compensate for his movement,
His net game is not that good, like his volleys and stuff. But probably the two areas are like the net game and the just naturally defensively. But
yeah,
I think he is gonna like he might not win another Masters 1000, but I think he can definitely have another top 10 season.
Yeah, I think he might if the conditions are right. Maybe he can pull off like a Cincinnati win.
Yeah, he'll probably need to stay healthy, like
that too,
for a much longer period, because last year, even though he finished number 9, he still had so many injuries because he didn't play the entire clay season, pretty much.
Yeah,
and his foot was in a boot, like I think after Wimbledon until the U.S. Open, which didn't help. Then he lost in the first round to Hope.
Yeah, he did suffer an injury, right? Indian Wells, so.
Oh yeah, and then Indian Wells, like he rolled his ankle, and then they got like 2 or 3 injections right before the match, numbed, so he couldn't feel the pain at all. But then that wore off, and then he was out for a lot of the clay season. So.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
So so that was and obviously Netflix covered that.
Yeah, so that was one of the good parts. I feel like because Fritz was able to win it, like Breakpoint kind of like it was a lot better in that sense that like you could see Taylor Fritz's win and like how he showed up against Nadal. Obviously, they didn't. I don't think they mentioned Nadal having a rib injury in that
no,
final.
They didn't. That would have been nice had they added that.
Yeah,
because like that was obviously a big part of the outcome.
Yeah,
and also like because I get that they were only just trying to show like the next generation of players.
Yeah,
and like trying not to mention really Djokovic or Nadal, but like that was a big part. Like that would have been nice to at least mention.
Yeah, just to add a bit to the context of it. Yeah, but in all, like if we're just talking a little bit about Breakpoint, I enjoyed it because I just really like just be able to see more of players and like how they think, like in a day to day, and I find that it's kind of always good to give like another perspective of the tour. Sometimes it's really easy for us on Twitter and like podcasters and whatnot, just to be like, oh, you should like be more confident or like believe more in your shots or like study more tactically and stuff. But like, I mean, I feel like you really did get to show like how much tougher it can be. Like if you're up there and just like in and out and like it's just a very emotionally tiring to be a tennis player, I would say. Or an athlete.
It really gives you a good sense of the psychology that goes on, like behind the scenes, and what these players are like thinking. Because like even in that Fritz episode, like his entire team was basically telling him like, "Don't play, you're gonna risk your entire career. What are you doing? This is one match." And he's like, "No, I'm gonna regret this for the rest of my life if I don't go on that court."
Yeah.
And so basically, it just portrayed like that this side of him. And like, I don't think that was done for the cameras. I think that was actually that was a genuine part of the story. So I think that's it's good that they got that in there. And like Breakpoint can only really just like add to the game. It's not something that'll like hurt the sport or do any like whatever it is. It's just another like additional thing, basically.
So, it is more content, so why not? Yeah. So,
and we need more content in tennis in terms of like the covering the players and getting those interesting nuggets. Not necessarily more content in terms of more tennis, but more content in terms of like social media content, like for example.
Yeah, they'll come up like next year with like 5 different Masters 1000, like up to 14.
Yeah, and then
upgrading Indian Wells to a Grand Slam now.
But basically, and then I like how tennis also turns out these really cool stories, like the one with Mateo. You probably heard about the one with Mateo. God, what's his name? The one who's a real estate developer.
Oh yeah, it's
Mateo Pakodich. because he beat Jack Sock and he qualified for Delray Beach. But that
Mhm.
story was nuts because this guy has a day job 9 through 6, and
Yeah.
he's in real estate development and like finance,
Yeah.
and like his backstory was wild because he has an MBA from Harvard, and he was ranked in the like around 200 in 2016, and he played at Princeton. He was a really good player for 4 years at Princeton. And then like from 14 to 16, 2014 to 2016, he got to 200 in the world. So you're thinking, okay, like now he can break through, like he's pretty good. But
Yeah.
then he got all these injuries.
Yeah, he got a very serious stomach disease, I believe.
Yeah, like he had to get surgery for his stomach, and then he like never really recovered from that. And then that's when he thought, okay, I can get my business degree from Harvard. And then he started working 9 through 5 because then COVID hit, and he could pretty much only play local events. And then now he just like does this like part time, like he might not even like play like on the tour like that much because he's so pretty much very successful in his normal
life, his normal career. Yeah.
And like he trains with like 70-year-olds, like his boss.
Yeah,
and
he's also 33 years old. So like, I mean,
Yeah.
if he gives
So it
this
kinda
a
makes
shot, it's
sense.
gonna last for like 3 years max.
Yeah, but that's
So
pretty wild that you can go and beat Jack Sock
yeah,
in your first match and qualify. It's kind of like the Marcus Willis story at Wimbledon. Like
yeah, that was a cool one as well.
Like it's kind of one of those like fairy tales. It doesn't like last very long, but it's cool when it happens.
Yeah, it's always a feel good story, like when you hear those. So yeah. But yeah, I guess that makes the round of it. Like as we said, like we're not gonna go over the full draw of Dubai, the WTA 1000, but we will be following it. You can follow it with us and just like send us highlights and whatnot, like just making comments on Twitter at Tennis and Bagels. Tennis and Bagels official. Tennis and Bagels official. No.
Yeah, Tennis and Bagels official is our.
It's just the name of the account.
But you can follow us at Tennis and Bagels, I think.
Yeah, it's just Tennis and Bagels. And you can follow Vansh when he's going to share a bunch of crazy stats all the time at VanshB2K, and my horrible takes at Rolenberg Andre. And other things. And this week I shared a bunch of music. There's nothing to do with tennis. So if you want to follow me for like my personal stuff, that's there. But like
your disdain for guacamole is
my horrible take on guacamole. Yeah, let me know in my comments if you like guacamole or not, because I don't. And yeah. Well, I don't hate guacamole, by the way. I eat it, but I don't get the passion for it. It's just Yeah. I kind of I like it.
Like for like parties and like Super Bowls, like for the Super Bowl or like a big like event or like just a kind of nice snack or something. But, I can. I think we all have our food opinions that are different.
Yeah, the controversial food opinions.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure everyone has at least one. So
and Owen, who isn't here, maybe we're gonna be able to chat soon. But you can also follow him at Tennis Nation. And we'll see you next time. So see you later. Bye.